Good evening all, and welcome back to Farcical Fears. An abandoned town. Metal sculptures scattered everywhere. Then a tractor rolled toward them, decorated with a deer head and rusty chains. 6 true stories from America's creepiest small towns. And every single one actually happened. A woman with 2 eye patches staring through a crowded diner. Knives and machetes hanging from trees in the middle of nowhere. An entire town where locals follow outsiders to make sure they leave. Doors slamming shut as strangers drive past. A pub where everyone goes silent and stares. And a ghost town with a deadly curse that still haunts visitors today. These places still exist. You could drive through one tomorrow. If you are new here, make sure to subscribe to Farcical Fears for daily true horror content that will keep you up at night. Hit that notification bell so you never miss when the darkness calls. Story 1 starts now. Story 1. The Watchers of Millbrook. Sarah Chen sat frozen in her car, hands gripping the steering wheel so hard her knuckles turned white. Through the diner window, 43 people stared at her. Not glancing, staring. And every single one of them had stopped chewing at the exact same moment. But what happened next changed everything. To understand why Sarah will never drive through small towns again, we need to go back to that Tuesday morning. Sarah was a travel blogger documenting America's hidden gems. Millbrook, Pennsylvania seemed perfect. Population 340, 1 diner, 0 online reviews. She pulled into town at 11:47 a.m. The streets were empty. Too empty. But she didn't notice the curtains moving in every window she passed. The gas station attendant filled her tank without speaking. Didn't ask for payment. Just pointed toward the center of town and walked back inside. Sarah thought it was small-town charm. She had no idea. The diner's bell chimed as she entered. That's when things got strange. Every booth was packed. Families, couples, solo diners, all eating in perfect silence. Not the comfortable quiet of people enjoying a meal, the kind of silence that feels like pressure in your ears. Sarah sat at the counter. The waitress, name tag said Donna, poured coffee without asking. Steam rose from the cup, even though Sarah watched her pour it from a pot that had been sitting for hours. "You're not from Millbrook," Donna said. Not a question, a statement. Sarah smiled nervously. "Just passing through." She had no idea those would be the most important words she'd ever speak. Sarah ordered eggs and toast. Donna didn't write it down, didn't call it to the kitchen. Just turned and walked away. That's when Sarah looked around and noticed something that made her blood run cold. Everyone was eating the exact same thing. Scrambled eggs, white toast, black coffee. Same portions, same placement on identical white plates. A man in a booth nearby cut his eggs, fork scraping against ceramic. The sound echoed. Then Sarah realized why. It was the only sound in the entire diner. Her phone buzzed. A text from a number she didn't recognize. "Leave, now. Don't look back." Sarah's hands started shaking. She looked up. Every person in that diner had turned to face her. Fork halfway to mouth. Coffee cups suspended in air. A child's hand frozen reaching for a crayon. 43 pairs of eyes, locked on her. No one blinked. No one moved, just stared. The air felt thick. Sarah couldn't breathe, but it was already too late. She stood up fast. Her chair scraped against linoleum. The sound broke something. Everyone's head tilted, same angle, same direction, like puppets on the same string. Donna appeared behind the counter holding Sarah's plate. Scrambled eggs, white toast, black coffee. "You haven't eaten yet," Donna said. Her voice sounded wrong, too flat, like she was reading from a script she'd memorized but didn't understand. Sarah backed toward the door. 43 people stood up. Same movement, same speed. The little girl in the corner booth smiled. Her teeth were too white, too perfect, too many. Sarah ran, burst through the door, ran to her car, started the engine. Her hands fumbled with the keys. Through the diner window, everyone had returned to their seats, eating again like nothing happened. But as she pulled away, she looked in her rearview mirror. Every single person stood on the sidewalk, watching, not waving, not moving, just watching. She drove for 6 hours straight. Didn't stop until she hit Pittsburgh, didn't eat, didn't check her phone, just drove. When she finally pulled over at a rest stop, she opened her phone. 73 missed calls, all from the same number, the one that texted her. She never answered. 2 weeks later, Sarah finally looked at her dashcam footage. She wished she hadn't. Every frame she'd captured driving through Millbrook showed the same thing. People standing in windows, people standing in doorways, people standing at the end of driveways, all facing the same direction, all watching her car. But that's not what made her delete everything. In the final frame, as she accelerated out of town, there was something standing in the road behind her. Something tall. Something that didn't move like a person. Something that cast a shadow even though it was noon and the sun was directly overhead. When she zoomed in, she could see its face. It looked like Donna, but its smile was too wide, and it had 43 eyes. Sarah deleted her blog the next day. She still drives for work, but now she takes highways. Only highways. She's memorized every rest stop between Pennsylvania and Ohio, every gas station with well-lit parking lots, every diner that's part of a chain, because she knows that in Millbrook, they're still watching, still waiting, still eating their eggs and toast, waiting for someone else to walk through that door, waiting for someone who doesn't know the rules. And somewhere in her nightmares, she can still hear Donna's voice. Flat. Empty. Wrong. You haven't eaten yet. Story 2. The Sculptor's Garden. Marcus Webb's hands were shaking so badly he could barely turn the key in his motorcycle's ignition. Behind him, grinding metal on asphalt. Getting closer. He looked back once. The tractor was 15 feet away, decorated with deer antlers and chains that dragged and sparked against the road. But that wasn't what made Marcus scream. It was what sat in the driver's seat. Something that used to be human. But what happened next changed everything. To understand what Marcus saw that day, we need to go back 6 hours to when he and his club made a decision they'd regret for the rest of their lives. The Iron Ridge Motorcycle Club was riding from Colorado to Missouri on back roads. Avoiding highways meant avoiding cops, and avoiding cops meant they could open up their engines and really ride. Marcus was lead that day, which meant he chose the route. Around 2 p.m. they found themselves on a county road that wasn't on any of their maps. No road signs, no mile markers, just cracked asphalt cutting through dead Kansas farmland. Then Marcus saw the buildings, a whole town, right there in the middle of nowhere. But there were no cars, no people, no sound except the wind and their engines. They pulled over at what used to be the main street. Maybe a dozen buildings, general store, post office, something that might have been a church. All the windows were intact but covered in decades of dust. Tommy, the youngest member, laughed. "Ghost town, boys. Let's check it out." That's when things got strange, because scattered throughout the town were sculptures, dozens of them, made from scrap metal, car parts, farm equipment. Some were 10 feet tall. They looked like people. Sort of. But wrong. Proportions off. Limbs too long. heads tilted at angles that made Marcus's neck hurt just looking at them. The sculptures were arranged in groups, like they were having conversations or watching something. Marcus walked closer to one near the post office. It was made from a tractor seat, barbed wire, and what looked like bicycle frames twisted into the shape of arms. But it was the head that made his stomach turn. A rusted oil drum with holes punched through for eyes and a mouth. And inside the drum, hanging from wires, were dozens of small bones. They swayed in the wind. Click, click, click. Marcus stepped back. That's when he noticed all the sculptures were facing the same direction, toward the center of town, toward a building that might have been a town hall. Tommy was already walking toward it. "Yo, Marcus, check this out." Marcus wanted to leave. Every instinct screamed at him to get back on his bike and go. But he followed Tommy. They pushed open the door. It groaned. Inside was dark except for light coming through gaps in the roof. And there, covering every surface, were more sculptures. Smaller ones. Detailed. Some were just faces. Twisted metal faces with expressions that looked almost real. Fear, pain, screaming. But it was the one in the center of the room that made Tommy stop laughing. It was a motorcycle, made entirely from bones and barbed wire. And sitting on it was a figure made from what looked like human hair woven through chicken wire. Its hands were on the handlebars. Its head turned toward the door. Toward them. They ran. But when Marcus burst outside, he froze. All the sculptures had moved. They hadn't just shifted. They'd rotated. Every single one now faced the building they'd just left. Faced them. Marcus grabbed Tommy. "We're leaving. Now." The other club members didn't argue. They'd seen it too. Engines roared to life. Marcus kicked his bike into gear. That's when he heard it. Metal scraping, grinding. He turned. At the end of the street, a tractor was rolling toward them. Slowly. Its engine wasn't running. No one was driving it. Except there was someone in the seat. Something made of deer antlers, chains, and rusted metal. And it was grinning. A grill from an old car formed its mouth. And that mouth was full of keys, hundreds of keys, car keys, house keys, motorcycle keys. They rode, fast. The tractor shouldn't have been able to keep up. But when Marcus looked in his mirror, it was there. 20 feet behind, then 15. Its wheels weren't turning. It was sliding, scraping. The antlers on its head scraped against the air like they were cutting through something invisible. Tommy was screaming into his radio. "It's right behind me. It's right." Static. Marcus looked back. Tommy's bike was slowing, like something was pulling it. Tommy was leaning forward, throttle wide open, but his bike was going backwards. Toward the tractor. Toward the thing in the seat. Marcus made a choice he'd hate himself for forever. He didn't stop. He accelerated. The last thing he saw in his mirror was Tommy's bike being lifted off the ground by chains that shot out from the tractor like tentacles. 3 hours later, Marcus and the remaining club members stopped at a diner in Salina. They called the police, reported Tommy missing, gave them coordinates as close as they could remember. The police searched for 2 weeks. They found the road. They found where it dead-ended into an empty field. No town, no buildings, no sculptures, nothing. The county records showed a town had existed there. Population 140. Abandoned in 1987 after a factory fire killed 23 people. But the town had been demolished in 1991. Razed completely. Nothing left. Marcus tried to convince himself he'd hallucinated from heat exhaustion, that they'd gotten turned around, that Tommy had just run off. But 6 months later, a package arrived at his house. No return address. Inside was a sculpture. Small, maybe 6 inches tall, made from motorcycle chain and what looked like finger bones. It was a perfect replica of Tommy, and it was screaming. Marcus doesn't ride anymore. He sold his bike, sold his leather, left the club. But sometimes, late at night, he hears metal scraping against asphalt outside his window. He doesn't look. He just closes his eyes and pretends he's somewhere else. Somewhere far away from that town that doesn't exist. Somewhere the sculptor can't find him. But deep down, he knows. Artists always finish their work. And Marcus is the one that got away. Story 3. The Boundary Line. Daniel Kovac stood outside the pub, paralyzed, as 7 men lined up on the sidewalk. They weren't moving, weren't speaking, just staring at him with eyes that promised violence. The oldest one, gray beard down to his chest, held a hurley stick and tapped it against his palm. Slow, deliberate. Daniel's crew was already in the van, doors locked, engine running. But Daniel couldn't move, because the old man smiled. And that smile said, "We know where you're going, and we'll be there first." But what happened next changed everything. To understand why Daniel never filmed in rural towns again, we need to go back 3 hours to when his production crew made a mistake they'd spend years trying to forget. Daniel was a documentary filmmaker from Dublin, working on a project about disappearing Irish villages. His team of 4 had spent the morning shooting exteriors in County Mayo when they stumbled on a town that wasn't in their research. No name on the map, just a cluster of buildings around a single intersection. Population couldn't have been more than 80. 1 pub, 1 church, a handful of houses. Daniel's assistant director, Claire, checked her phone. No signal, no Wi-Fi. They should have turned around. That's when things got strange. Because every house they passed had someone standing in the window, not looking out casually. Standing, motionless, watching their van drive by. The pub looked busy, cars parked outside, lights on. Daniel thought they could grab lunch and ask locals about the town's history. The crew walked in at exactly 1:15 p.m. The room went silent. Not gradually, instantly, like someone had cut a wire. 40 men sat at tables in the bar. All of them turned to look. No women, no children, just men. Ages ranging from 20 to 70. Daniel smiled. "Afternoon. We're just looking for a bite to eat. Maybe ask a few questions about the area." Nobody responded. The bartender, a thick man with scarred knuckles, stared at Daniel for 10 seconds, then said, "We don't serve your kind." Claire stepped forward. "Excuse me? What kind is that?" The old man in the corner with the gray beard laughed. One short bark. The rest joined in, synchronized, like they'd rehearsed it. The sound echoed wrong. Too loud for the space. The bartender leaned forward. The kind that asks questions. The kind that takes pictures. The kind that doesn't belong. Daniel's cameraman, Finn, started backing toward the door. Smart man. But Daniel's pride got in the way. "We're Irish citizens. We have every right." That's when the old man stood up. The laughter stopped. Every man in that pub stood up with him. Same motion, same speed, like soldiers responding to an unspoken command. The old man walked toward Daniel. Slow, deliberate. He got close enough that Daniel could smell him. Peat smoke and something rotten. Something old. "You're not from here," the old man said. His voice was soft, almost gentle. "And here doesn't want you." Daniel felt something cold crawl up his spine. The old man's eyes weren't right. Too pale, almost colorless, like looking into fog. "We were just leaving," Daniel said. His voice cracked. The old man smiled. "Yes, you were." He turned to the bartender. "Mary, were we serving food today?" The bartender shook his head. No, Michael, we weren't. In fact, I don't recall us ever serving food. Funny what a man's mind can make him think he remembers. But Claire had seen her. She'd been holding a plate, a full plate of stew and potatoes, steaming. She looked at the bar. The plate was gone, like it had never existed. They left. Fast. Daniel's hands shook as he opened the van door. The old man followed them outside. So did the others. 40 men filing out of the pub, lining the sidewalk, not blocking their path, just standing there, watching. Daniel started the engine, put the van in reverse. That's when the old man walked up to Daniel's window and knocked. Daniel, against every instinct, rolled it down. The old man leaned in. You'll be taking that footage with you, but you'll never use it, because if you do, we'll know, and we'll come find you. Not today, not tomorrow, but we'll come, and when we do, you'll wish you'd never heard of this place. Daniel didn't respond. Couldn't. The old man smiled again, patted the door twice. Safe travels now. Mind the roads. They can be dangerous for outsiders. They drove. No one spoke for 30 minutes. Daniel kept checking the rearview mirror, expecting to see them following. But the road stayed empty. When they finally got signal back, Claire immediately Googled the coordinates of where they'd been. No town showed up, just forest and farmland. Daniel checked the footage, hours of it, establishing shots, driving through the town, the pub exterior. But every frame inside the pub was corrupted, just static and a sound like whispering in a language Daniel didn't recognize. The metadata said the camera had been turned off, but Finn swore he'd been recording the entire time. They never filed a police report. What would they say? That a town threatened them? A town that apparently doesn't exist? 6 months later, Daniel received a package. No return address. Postmarked from County Mayo. Inside was a photograph. It showed Daniel's van parked outside his apartment in Dublin. The photo was taken at night. Recent. He recognized his new planters on the balcony. He'd bought them 2 weeks ago. But standing next to the van, barely visible in the shadow of a streetlight, was a figure. Tall, gray beard, holding a hurley stick. On the back of the photo, written in handwriting that looked like it came from another century, were 5 words. We know where you live. Daniel sold his apartment 3 weeks later, moved to London, changed his phone number, deleted all his social media. He still makes documentaries, but only in cities now, only in places with crowds and cameras and witnesses. Because he knows that in some parts of Ireland, there are towns that don't appear on maps, towns with their own rules, their own justice. And if you break those rules, if you cross that boundary, they'll follow you, patiently, quietly, until the day they decide you've had enough time to regret what you've done. And on that day, no one will hear you scream. Because in those towns, strangers don't matter. And screaming is just another sound the wind carries away. Story 4. The hanging woods. Jade Morrison's headlights caught them first. Dozens of blades hanging from tree branches. Machetes, hunting knives, rusted saws, all pointing down, all perfectly spaced. Like teeth in a mouth waiting to close. But that wasn't the worst part. Between the blades hung dolls. Children's dolls. Dozens of them. Porcelain faces cracked and stained, and every single one was facing the road. Facing her. But what happened next changed everything. To understand why Jade hasn't slept through a full night in 8 months, we need to go back to that Friday afternoon when she and her friends decided to take a shortcut through rural Iowa. Jade was 22. University student, psychology major. She and 3 friends were driving from Des Moines to Cedar Falls for a concert. Google Maps said take Highway 20. But Tyler, her boyfriend, wanted to see the real Iowa. Back roads, small towns, the authentic experience. So they turned off onto County Road G14 just outside Grundy Center. The road was barely 2 lanes. Trees pressed in from both sides. Old farmland, abandoned silos. Nothing special. That's when things got strange, because after 20 minutes, they hadn't seen a single car. Not one house with lights on, just empty fields and tree lines that seemed to get closer with every mile. Maya, sitting in the back, was the first to notice the dirt road. Look, there's a path. It cut into the woods on the left. No sign, no gate. Just 2 tire tracks disappearing into darkness between the trees. Tyler slowed down. Think we should check it out? Jade said no. Every instinct screamed no. But Tyler was already turning. Come on, 5 minutes. Could be cool. The car bumped over roots and rocks. Branches scraped the windows. The dirt road went on for maybe half a mile. Then it opened into a clearing. That's when they saw the trees and what hung from them. Jade slammed on the brakes. The car stopped at 10 feet from the first tree. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. They just stared. The blades were arranged in patterns, spirals, circles. Some trees had 3 knives. Some had 20, all different sizes. All pointing down like they were waiting for something to walk underneath. But it was the dolls that made Jade's skin crawl. Baby dolls, Barbie dolls, antique porcelain dolls with glass eyes. Some were whole, some were just heads, some were just arms reaching out from the branches. Tyler whispered, "What the fuck is this?" Maya started crying. The 4th friend, David, grabbed his phone. No signal. Of course no signal. Jade put the car in reverse. That's when she noticed. Every doll was facing them. Dozens of faces. Dozens of eyes. All turned toward the car. Like they'd been watching. Like they'd been waiting. She reversed fast. Too fast. The car fish-tailed. Branches scraped metal. A doll fell from a tree and landed on the hood. Its head twisted. Its mouth opened. Jade screamed. Tyler reached through the window and knocked it off. It hit the ground and the head rolled away. But the eyes stayed on them. Tracking, following. Jade got the car turned around. She accelerated back toward the main road. But that's when David said the thing that made everyone freeze. There are more. He was looking out the back window. The woods behind them were full of them. Dolls hanging from every tree as far as he could see. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands. And every single one had turned to watch them leave. They hit the main road doing 60. Jade didn't slow down until they reached Waterloo 40 minutes later. They pulled into a gas station. Bright lights. People. Normal. Safe. Tyler checked the car. Long scratches down both sides. A chunk missing from the hood where the doll had landed. But that wasn't what made him go pale. Caught in the windshield wiper was a small hand. A doll's hand. Porcelain. 4 fingers and a thumb. Tyler pulled it free and threw it in the trash. But when he came back, it was sitting on the hood. Same position, same angle. David saw it too. "Dude, you threw that away." Tyler nodded. "I know." He picked it up again, walked to a different trash can 50 feet away, dropped it in. Came back. The hand was on the hood, waiting. They drove for 3 more hours that night. Kept the hand on the dashboard. Didn't touch it. Didn't talk about it. When they finally stopped at a motel in Cedar Falls, the hand was gone. Just vanished sometime during the drive. They told themselves it fell out a window, that it was just a coincidence, that the dolls were probably some weird art installation, that rural people do strange things. They went to the concert, tried to forget. But 3 days later, Jade found a photograph slipped under her dorm room door. No envelope, no note, just a picture. It showed her car in the clearing, taken from above, from the trees, and in the foreground, clear as day, was a doll. Looking at the camera, smiling. Maya transferred schools a month later. Wouldn't say why. Just packed up and left for California. David started seeing a therapist. Won't talk about what he tells her. Tyler broke up with Jade. Said he couldn't be with her anymore. Said every time he looked at her, he saw those trees, those blades, those faces. Jade tried to move on, but 6 months after that night, she got another photograph. This one showed her apartment building, taken from across the street, and in the window of her second-floor apartment, barely visible in the reflection, was a small figure, porcelain white, standing in her living room. She moved the next week, didn't tell anyone where, changed her number, deleted her social media, but she knows. Deep down, she knows. Because last week she woke up at 3 a.m. to a sound. Tapping, soft, rhythmic, coming from her closet. She didn't open it. She couldn't. She just sat in bed until sunrise, listening to tiny fingers tapping against wood. When morning came, she finally looked. Nothing inside. Just her clothes. Her shoes. Normal. But on the top shelf, pushed to the back where she couldn't see it, was a small porcelain hand. 4 fingers and a thumb. The same hand Tyler threw away. And scratched into the palm were 4 words in handwriting too small to be human. We're still watching you. Story 5. The silent street Patricia Brennan watched through her windshield as 12 curtains dropped in perfect sequence. One after another, like dominoes, like a choreographed performance. But these weren't performers. These were people in their homes. People who had all looked out their windows at the exact same moment and seen the Brennan family driving past. Then, as if receiving the same signal, they all closed their curtains at once. But what happened next changed everything. To understand why the Brennans never drove through that grid of streets again, we need to go back to a Sunday afternoon when boredom led them somewhere they were never meant to find. The Brennan family lived just outside Fort Riley, Kansas. Patricia, her husband Martin, and their 2 kids, Emma and Lucas. Sunday drives were their thing, a way to kill time, explore the back roads, see the parts of Kansas tourists never found. They'd been driving for about an hour when Martin took a turn down a county road they'd never noticed before. The road was perfectly straight, newly paved, strange for a rural area. After 2 miles, they saw the town, if you could call it that. 12 houses arranged in a perfect grid, 3 streets, 4 houses per street, all identical. White siding, black shutters, same mailboxes, same cars in the driveways, Toyota Camrys, every single one, silver. That's when things got strange. Martin slowed the car to 15 miles per hour. They drove down the first street. Patricia counted. 4 houses on the left, 4 on the right. Every lawn was exactly the same length. Every tree was the same height. Every driveway had the same crack pattern, like someone had copy-pasted reality. Emma, 13 years old, pressed her face to the window. "Mom, look at the windows." Patricia looked. In every window of every house stood a person, not moving, not waving, just standing, facing the street, facing their car. Men, women, children, all standing at their windows, all watching. Patricia's stomach tightened. "Martin, let's go." But Martin was already turning onto the second street. Same thing, 8 more houses, 8 more windows, 8 more people, all watching. Lucas, only 9, started to cry. "I don't like this place," Patricia reached back and squeezed his hand. "It's okay, baby. We're just looking." But she didn't believe her own words. Because as they turned onto the 3rd Street, something happened that made her blood freeze. Every person in every window turned their head to follow the car. Same movement, same speed, same angle, like their necks were connected by invisible wires. Patricia counted. 12 houses, 12 windows, 12 faces. And then, starting from the first house, the curtains began to close. 1, 2, 3, 4. Down the street. Methodical. Deliberate. Like a wave. Like a countdown. When the 12th curtain closed, the street was empty. Silent. Patricia could hear her own heartbeat. Martin drove to the end of the street. There was no exit. Just a dead end. A wall of trees so thick they looked like a solid barrier. He put the car in reverse. That's when they heard it. Doors opening, not 1 or 2, all 12, at the same time. The sound echoed. Patricia looked in the side mirror. People were stepping out onto their porches. Same posture, same stance. Arms at their sides, faces blank. No expression, no emotion. Just standing, watching the car reverse. Martin's hands shook on the wheel. He backed onto the 2nd Street, turned, accelerated toward the main road. Patricia looked back one more time. All 12 people had walked to the end of their driveways, standing in a line, watching, not following, just watching, making sure they left. They didn't speak for 20 minutes. When they finally stopped at a gas station in Junction City, Martin checked his phone, pulled up Google Maps, entered the coordinates of where they'd been based on the road they'd taken. Nothing showed up, just empty land. No streets, no houses, no town. Emma asked if they could report it. Martin shook his head. Report what? That we saw people standing in windows? That's not a crime. But Patricia knew. Deep down, she knew. That wasn't a town. That was something else. Something hidden. Something that didn't want to be found. And they'd found it anyway. They'd crossed a boundary they didn't know existed. And those people, if they were people, had let them leave. This time. 3 weeks later, Patricia was grocery shopping in Manhattan, Kansas. She turned down the cereal aisle and froze. A woman stood at the end of the aisle. Silver hair, blue cardigan. Patricia recognized her instantly. She'd been in the 4th window on the 2nd Street. The woman didn't move, didn't shop, just stood there, looking at Patricia. Patricia turned and walked the other way, fast. When she looked back, the woman was gone. Patricia convinced herself it was coincidence, similar features, mistaken identity. But then Martin saw him, the man from the 8th window, at a restaurant in Salina, just sitting, watching Martin eat. When Martin approached, the man left. No words, no explanation. Just stood and walked out. Emma stopped sleeping well. She said she had dreams about the street, about the curtains, about faces in windows that never blinked. Lucas started drawing pictures. The same picture over and over. 12 houses, 12 stick figures in windows. And in every drawing, one house had its door open. The 12th house. The one at the dead end. The one they'd reversed away from. Patricia asked him why that door was always open. Lucas looked at her with eyes too serious for a 9-year-old. Because they're waiting for us to come back. Patricia threw the drawings away. But the next morning, they were on the refrigerator, held up by magnets she didn't own. Magnets shaped like little silver cars. 6 months after that Sunday drive, the Brennans got a letter. No return address, no postage. Just their names written in perfect block letters on a white envelope. Inside was a photograph, aerial view, showing their house, their street, their neighborhood. And at the bottom of the photo, written in the same block letters, were GPS coordinates. Patricia entered them into her phone. They led to that town, that grid, those 12 houses. But now she noticed something she hadn't seen in person. The 12 houses formed a shape. When viewed from above, they spelled out a word. A single word in perfectly arranged architecture. Return. The Brennans moved 2 months later. Different state, different jobs, different schools. They don't drive on Sundays anymore. They don't explore back roads. They stay on highways. They stay where people are. Because they know that somewhere in Kansas, 12 houses still stand in a perfect grid. 12 windows still face the street. And 12 people still wait. Patient, silent, synchronized. Waiting for the family that saw them. Waiting for the family that knows. Waiting for the day the Brennans finally return. Story 6. Bodie's Debt. Ethan Graves woke up screaming at 3:17 a.m. His hands were covered in dirt, red California dirt, the kind that only exists in one place. Bodie. But Ethan was in his apartment in Sacramento, 200 miles away. And in his backpack, sitting on top of his clothes, was a small glass bottle. The same bottle he'd photographed in the abandoned general store. The same bottle he'd been careful not to touch. The same bottle that now sat in his possession with a note tied around it that read, "You took something from us. Now we take something from you." But what happened next changed everything. To understand why Ethan Graves no longer investigates paranormal activity, we need to go back to the October weekend he decided to visit America's most cursed ghost town. Ethan was 45, former professor of anthropology, current paranormal investigator with a YouTube channel and 15,000 subscribers. He'd been planning the Bodie trip for months. Bodie, California, population 0, was a gold rush town that boomed in the 1870s with nearly 10,000 residents. By 1915, it was dying. By 1942, it was dead. Fires destroyed most of the town. What remained became a state historic park in 1962. But Bodie had a reputation, a curse. Anyone who took anything from the town, a nail, a bottle, a piece of wood, would suffer terrible luck until the item was returned. The park received hundreds of packages every year. Stolen items mailed back with letters begging forgiveness, letters describing accidents, deaths, financial ruin. That's when things got strange. Ethan didn't believe in curses. He believed in psychology, mass hysteria, confirmation bias. People took items, felt guilty, then attributed normal life problems to supernatural punishment. He was going to prove it. Document the town, interview park rangers, collect testimonials, show the world that Bodie's curse was just folklore. He arrived on a Friday afternoon in late October. The park closed at 6 p.m. He had a permit for an overnight investigation. The rangers were friendly but serious. "Don't take anything," the older ranger said. Her name tag read, Dolores. She looked at Ethan with eyes that had seen too much. "I mean it. People don't listen. Then they mail things back and beg us to make it stop. But we can't. Once Bodie claims you, it doesn't let go." Ethan smiled. "I'm just here to document. I won't touch anything." The town was preserved perfectly. A frozen moment in time. The general store still had goods on shelves. The schoolhouse still had books on desks. The church still had hymnals in pews. Ethan set up cameras, recorded audio, took photographs. As the sun set, the temperature dropped fast. Desert cold, bone cold. Ethan put on his jacket and continued working. That's when he entered the Deschambault Hotel. 3 stories, dozens of rooms. Most were empty, but one room on the second floor had furniture, a bed, a dresser, a mirror, and on the dresser sat a photograph. A family. Mother, father, 3 children. Dated 1881. Ethan photographed it. Then he noticed the frame. It was cracked, barely holding together. Without thinking, and he'd regret this moment for the rest of his life, he reached out and adjusted it so it sat straighter. His finger touched the glass. That's when everything changed. The temperature dropped 20 degrees in seconds. Ethan's breath came out in clouds. The door to the room slammed shut. He tried the handle. Locked. But there was no lock, just a handle. He pulled. Nothing. Pushed. Nothing. The window rattled. Ethan turned. Something was standing in the corner. He couldn't see it clearly. Just a shape. A shadow. Tall. Wearing what looked like a dress from another century. It moved toward him, not walking, gliding. Ethan grabbed his camera. Pressed record. The camera died. Brand new battery. Fully charged. Dead. The shape got closer. Ethan could smell it now. Rot. Decay. Death. It reached for him. He screamed, threw his backpack at it. The shape dissipated like smoke. The door swung open. Ethan ran, grabbed his equipment, sprinted to his car, drove straight through, didn't stop until he hit Sacramento at 2 a.m. He went to bed, tried to sleep. That's when he woke up screaming with dirt on his hands and a bottle in his bag. The bottle was old. Hand-blown glass, amber-colored, a label so faded he couldn't read it. But he knew it was from Bodie. He knew he hadn't taken it. But it was in his possession, and according to the curse, that was enough. Ethan tried to rationalize. Maybe he'd grabbed it without realizing. Maybe it had been in his bag already. But he knew. Deep down, he knew. Bodie had given him something, and now he owed a debt. The first accident happened 3 days later. Ethan was driving to a lecture. His tire blew at 70 miles per hour. He spun across 3 lanes, missed a semi by inches. His car was totaled. He walked away without a scratch. But he knew. 1 week later, his apartment building caught fire. Started in the unit below his. Electrical. Everyone evacuated safely. But Ethan's unit suffered water damage. Everything ruined. Electronics, research, years of work, gone. He tried to return the bottle, mailed it to Bodie State Historic Park with a note explaining what happened. 3 days later, it arrived back at his door. Same package, same bottle. But now there was a new note inside. Mailing it back isn't enough. You have to bring it yourself. You have to apologize to the town. You have to ask permission to leave. Ethan bought a bus ticket. He was too afraid to drive. Didn't trust himself in a car anymore. He arrived in Bodie on a Tuesday. Off-season, almost no tourists. Dolores was working the gate. She looked at him, and her face went pale. You came back? Ethan nodded. I have to return something. Dolores closed her eyes. What did you take? Ethan showed her the bottle. I didn't take it. It came with me. Dolores backed away. That's worse. That means Bodie chose you. She let him in, told him where to go, the old cemetery at the edge of town. Leave it at the children's graves, she said. They're the most forgiving. Ethan walked through the town. It felt different, hostile. Every building seemed to watch him. Every window seemed to hide something. He reached the cemetery. 50 graves, most unmarked. Some with wooden crosses barely standing. He found the children's section, 5 small graves. He knelt down, placed the bottle on the center grave. I'm sorry, he whispered. I didn't mean to take anything. I didn't mean to disrespect this place. Please, let me leave in peace. The wind stopped. Complete silence. Then, from behind him, He heard footsteps. He turned. Nothing. But when he looked back at the grave, the bottle was gone, and in its place was a small wooden cross, freshly carved, with his name on it. Ethan ran, didn't stop until he reached the gate. Dolores was waiting. Did it work? Ethan showed her the photo he'd taken, the cross with his name. Dolores nodded slowly. That means it's not over. That means Bodie accepted your apology, but you're marked now. You're connected. The curse isn't lifted, it's just paused. Ethan went home. The accident stopped. His life returned to normal. He closed his YouTube channel, stopped investigating, got a job teaching again. But every year on the anniversary of that October night, he wakes up at 3:17 a.m. with dirt on his hands. And somewhere in his apartment, he'll find something from Bodie. A nail, a piece of wood, a button, a coin. Small things. Things he never took. Things that appear, anyway. Reminders that Bodie hasn't forgotten. Reminders that he owes a debt that can never fully be repaid. Last year, the item was a photograph. The same photograph from the Deschambault Hotel. The family from 1881. But this time, there was a sixth person in the image. Standing behind the family, tall, wearing a dress from another century. And it was smiling. Because in Bodie, the dead don't rest. They wait. They watch. And when someone breaks their rules, even accidentally, they collect. Not all at once, but slowly, piece by piece, year by year. Until one day the person who took from Bodie finally returns. Not as a visitor, but as a permanent resident. And Ethan knows, deep in his bones, that one day he'll wake up and the dirt on his hands won't wash off. And when that day comes, he'll drive to Bodie one last time. Not because he wants to, but because he won't have a choice. Because Bodie always gets what it's owed. Always.